Hello, everybody. I am Sam Wronski. I am a regional cloud advocate here at Microsoft. My job is to help empower all of you to build and create awesome things on top of Microsoft technology. So what we're doing today is going to talk a little bit about our code of conduct. So before we jump into all of the fun stuff that we have planned in this stream, I do want to quickly just call out to keep your comments respectful. Make sure that you're trying to be inclusive of all the other people who are in chat and trying to be in different places of learning. So try to stay respectful. Other than that, yeah, if you're just joining or watching this later, all of our videos end up on our Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel, so you can always catch the video on demand there. If you have questions, feel free to drop them in the comments, because this stream is the Reactor Code Lab. So hello again. But what this stream is sort of a intentionally like co-learning experience where we're going to take something new that I haven't done or I'm still learning and learn that part together. So if you don't know it, that's perfect because I probably don't either. So this is a great time to ask questions. If there's detours you want us to go on, let us know that as well, and we can go on that. Yeah, today we are taking a look at gRPC and remote procedure calls. I was just browsing the documentation, so let me get back here. So what this is a way for you to more quickly send communication between one of your services to another one. This isn't necessarily something that you'd want exposed to anybody, but it is really useful if you're building a microservice system and you want lots of people to be able to communicate inside of your network really quickly. So if you have lots of microservices, it turns out it can take a long time to serialize that JSON and send the request and then deserialize it and do everything else. That process takes time. And so if you have that chain of a bunch of services, maybe 20 or so services that your call is going through, you're deserializing and reserializing the same data over and over and over and over and over again. So what RPCs do, or protocol buffers like this is going to do, is serialize that down into a really condensed binary format that you can then use to really quickly plug into your services. So it deserializes and reserializes very quickly, and makes communicating between your services a lot faster most of the time. And so that's what we're going to take a look at today. We're going to try to take a look at how we can integrate this into ASP.NET. I've never done this in .NET, so who knows? And then we're gonna see what we can figure out, because it's been a while since I've worked with protocol buffers. So if you are familiar with some of the other stuff we've done, we have taken a look at things like SignalR, which also uses protocol buffers to send that, or RPCs rather, to send those messages back and forth. This is different. So there's a lot of different ways to do this. This is really common in, again, microservice type things, especially on Kubernetes when you have lots of services and you want to communicate that way. So what we're going to be doing is just creating a really basic ASP.NET service that we can use to test these things out. So we're going to run through and do this and then see what happens. So the way this works is there is an intermediate language when you're working with protocol buffers. This is what defines the services, which are actually going to be the things that you can request, and the messages that you can send, which are going to be your, think of JSON blobs. And so this gives you a way to kind of define those in a language that is not C#, is not the language that you're programming in. And the advantage of that is that you can then generate this for any language you want. So if you're building a service for C# or something, this gives you a way to generate a API endpoint that can actually invoke something like JavaScript or Java. And you can do all of that and make all these different languages work really nicely together without having to spend a whole bunch of extra time. So that is this. So we're going to just get started by creating this. I don't really know the best way. What's happening here is they are creating a protobuf file with a .proto extension and then automatically compiling this. So just to make this clear, we go to .NET New and list all the options we have for creating something new. There's actually a gRPC option here. And this is also an option if you're doing this from Visual Studio. So you can also have access to this and just create a gRPC thing. For learning this, I think the best option might actually be different than this. It might be to just create an empty thing and see what we can do with it. Or let's do this. .NET New gRPC name sample gRPC. Sure. So this is going to go and create that new service for us. And so if I open this up in Visual Studio Code, we can go and do that. So it's going to go and open a new VS Code instance with this project opened. And now we get a bunch of fun things here. We get services, this is our service greeter. And I shouldn't start here. Let's take a look at what this protocol buffer thing is. This is where, if you're working with these, this is where you should start, because this is the important information for what's actually happening here. And I think I just got rid of an extension that I probably wanted. Let's actually, again, I haven't worked with this, so let's actually see if there are protocol buffers. Not sure. All right, we'll ignore that for now. That's probably fine. We have a bunch of notices. Anyway, so this is your special language that you can use to actually create these things. There's a few extra things happening here. You can see there's a option for setting the namespace of the files that are getting generated. You can see the syntax. So we're actually defining which version of this syntax we're using. This is similar to other things you might have where you have a version of different things. This is Proto 3, which I believe is the newest one. You might also see Proto 2, because I think there's still some of that. And then packages, I don't know what that is. So we'll figure that out. And then we have our service, which is the greeter that has an RPC called say hello. And then that say hello is going to take in as a parameter a hello request. So that's the input. And then the returns is going to be the output of hello reply. And what are those? Those are messages. So everything that goes in and out is going to be a message that goes along this buffer, I guess, that we're creating. And so the hello request has a string called name, and the reply has a string called message. So we're going to send something and say, here's my name. And then we're going to get some greeting back. It's going to say hello. These numbers are not in order. This is important. These numbers matter quite a bit because the way this works to save on space, to reduce the size of the messages you're sending, the name is not going to be identified by a name. It's going to be identified by an integer. So what that means is that this is the ID of this field. If we change this, then it's no longer compatible with everything else that is using a generated version of this. So we can explore that a little bit later, but if we have two things called name, so message, I guess, and say this is 2. If at any point I decide that we should flip these and then still keep the order nice and fancy, I've just swapped the parameters for anybody that is using the old version. They'll still get the messages and they'll still think they're valid, but this won't work. You'll have swapped your parameters because they're not working on name, they're working on the ID that you're passing in. So that's something to keep in mind. And then the other thing is just the hello reply, doing the same thing. And it also supports things like comments. The language isn't, there's not too much here because all you're doing is sort of defining your data structures, what's going in and out. And then also, what are the API interfaces? What is your contract that other people can do? And then this is the thing that we're going to have to implement. And so if we jump over here, we should be able to see that. So we have our greeter base coming from our example gRPC, which is here. So we have our example gRPC here as the parameter that we're passing in. And then that comes in here. So we have a greeter class, greeter, and then the greeter base. I think that's probably some sort of automatic name that gets generated. So we have a greeter, and then greeter base is something else, base class for it. Okay, perfect. And then this is going to implement our say hello. And you can see there's overrides here. So we're actually overriding these methods. So it's sort of helping us along. And then the other thing that we should know is this. So inside of our CS project file, we have a little bit of extra magic happening here. You can actually see that we've actually included our protocol buffers in our project file, saying these should be included when we're compiling this. And what's going to happen is when we actually run and compile this, it's going to automatically make those versions of the file for us and generate some temporary things that we can use to work all of this and make all of this actually do what we want. So this is that. And then in order to make that happen, I believe that's this. So our gRPC, is that right? I don't think that is. We'll have to dive in deeper. So what we're probably going to do is take a look at this and then roll everything back and try to do it from scratch and see if we can understand it all. And I think that'll be kind of a nice way to understand how all of this works. And having two of these will be useful because we'll want to be able to communicate between every service in our system. So let's go and tinker with this. First off, if we go into our terminal, we should be able to build this and do a .NET build. And then this should automatically create this object folder. What we can do in here is actually look at what's getting generated. So if we look in our protos, this protos folder, which is where our protocol buffer was, we now have two extra classes that get generated behind the scenes to define all of this. So this is some of the stuff that we're getting as part of all of this. This, I don't think is going to be that useful to actually see, but this is how it's actually working, which might be good to know, is that your proto buffer, or the way this is implemented, you don't need to compile the protocol buffers yourself. That will happen just as part of building your project. So it should always be in sync. And then you can use that generated code as a way to implement everything that you're trying to do. So that's all of that. So I think we've covered everything. Again, I'm still learning a lot of this. So we are going to explore as much as we can. But yeah, I think that's mostly everything that we need to know to kind of get started with this. So let's dive in. So first thing we need is a proto file. So we can actually kind of build our own around this here. And let's go and see. I don't know the best way to start this actually. I feel like if you're going to be creating and working with these, you're probably going to already be starting from this point anyway. But I think .NET new, I think Web API would work for this. Let's try that. And let's go and create our gRPC test. So again, have not done this, so we're going to learn on the way. But the reason I'm doing this is because I want to see what it's like to actually add this. Because you might not always be building this from a template. There might be a lot of times when you want to add this as an option to your service. Maybe you built everything on REST, and now you want to swap this in and maybe increase the or reduce the time it takes for your web calls to complete because you're spending a lot of time going down that chain. So this might be a little bit more realistic, I guess, than something you would just greenfield build a new gRPC app because that's already done. we already created that. So if you're not starting from there, what does it look like? And I don't know. So let's go and figure that out. So we want test or gRPC test. Perfect. Let's open this. And now none of the stuff we just had is going to work, which is fine. That's totally okay. And so I'm going to just get started by deleting a bunch of things. We're going to delete our controllers and our weather forecast. That can go away too. And I think that's it. So now we just have a program. So it's looking a little bit less interesting, but let's go and add in the stuff that we need. So we need a protocol buffer. So let's go and add that. And just to save on time, I'm just going to copy and paste this. And I don't think path should matter. It will get generated wherever we put it. So let's just put it here and say hello.proto. And so we create this, paste this in. Now we get our same service. We get the same two messages, the reply and the request. And so all of this should work. And so now we just need to automatically have it generate things for us. And so the way I'm going to be testing this is first, let's turn that on. And then let's go here. All right. There's probably an extension for this, but I don't know what it is yet. So we're not going to use one. It's just going to be gray text, unfortunately. So apologies for that. But what we're going to do is try to figure out what we need to do here. So I've created this. We need to actually import this into our CS project. And so the way that was done is in here, we have our item group. It looks like this. And then we have the proto buff thing. Let's go, here we go. Go and grab this. And then drop that there. So typically, the way I've seen this done a lot is you would not necessarily include your protocol buffers inside of your main project. A lot of the time you would move this out. You would take this and put this in some library that you would share across applications, because that's sort of the power of this, is now you can generate all these APIs. And so that contract can be shared across everybody that needs to use it. Because a lot of the time you're not just communicating inside of your team, you're communicating across organizations or across companies. And so this inside of an application is less useful because now it's stuck inside of my application, where what I might want to do is actually roll this out into a library and provide that as a service to everybody that wants to use it, so they can just import that. Otherwise, you can just give the protocol buffer to people, and you might reference this as like a submodule in your project and use that submodule as a way to generate things. There's lots of different ways to do this, but just keep in mind, like the reason for doing this is if you have lots of services communicating with each other. If this is something you're trying to expose externally, it makes less sense. So there's that. We need to call this hello proto. So this should go into our project file right here and link between the two. And then the other thing is I don't think we need this swashbuckle at all anymore. I think that can go away. And yeah, I think the other thing we're going to need is this gRPC tools package. So let's go and add that as well. Let's copy this. And what this tools is going to be the thing that generates your code. So I showed that you got generated code from your protocol buffers. This is the tool that does that. Otherwise, I don't think it's going to work. We can test that. I think. Yeah, I don't have anything else in here. So let's go and just do this. .NET build. I don't know what's going to happen here. I've never done this. It works. Neat. Why? Hold on. Let's go and see if we did anything. I don't think so. So I don't think there's actually anything that gets that happens because I think that protocol buffer section of our project just gets ignored. So our build works, but our protocol buffers don't, which means that if I try to reference this now, so like we have this, it's not in a namespace, so I don't really know where that ends up. But if I go and try to find my greeter, it's not there. There's nothing here because I didn't create anything. So we need to actually make that work. And so I think the way to do that is to add this gRPC tools package, which is actually going to have the stuff to compile this. And so if we pull that in and do our .NET, let's make all of this a little bit nicer. So let's go up here, move this. And let's go and throw this into our photos folder. Do that and jump into our project. We should be able to go into protos/hello and generate this. So there we go. Did that work? I think so. Perfect. So let's go and just double check that this actually worked. And now we actually have our hello and hello gRPC that are generated here, which means we should be able to find these somewhere. So let's go do that. Let's go and see if we can find our greeter. There we go. So now we have this greeter class that we generated, and it looks something like this. Somewhere inside of our generated code, we now have this that got generated for us. This is all generated code, so it's going to be a little bit messy. But that isn't really the interesting part, because we should just need to follow the same pattern that we had with the other thing. So if I'm trying to add a service here, let's go and create a service. So I'm going to call something services, and let's go and create a greeter service. And so this is going to have a public class. We can extend that greeter base for this. You'll also see, so there's two classes inside of here. There is the greeter base and the greeter client. So the greeter client is what you're going to use to actually call this greeter base, if that makes sense. So that's what all of this is for. So here's what we should be able to do. Implement this. Can we just generate overrides? Perfect. Do I need equality stuff? Is that needed, or can I just use the base for that? Already defined something. Okay. Is this because I'm using the try renaming this? Okay, interesting. Do a build and see what happens. Oh, okay, it is still broken. I have screwed something up. Hypername space name gRPC could not be found. Okay, I've broken it. How? Not entirely sure. So we're gonna have to tinker a little bit. But progress, I guess. So we have all of this. Let's go and dive a little bit deeper into this. I'm also going to I think we can just reopen this. And this way I have cross-references. This is actually a lot of how I do or figure out this kind of thing, is look at something that does work and then see what's different between mine. I know our CS project is different. So we both, I think, referenced this, but we should double check. Okay, we're referencing different things. That's okay. We're going to ignore that for now. But we do have a whole bunch of things that can't be found. And I think this might just be me ignoring namespaces. So just to simplify this a little bit, let's do Reactor Code Lab. Sure. Interesting. Let's go and double check again where else we need to look. So we have all of this. And then if I go and look at the greeter service, yeah, there's definitely no implementation of all the extra stuff. So we should just be able to grab the normal logger stuff so we can inject our logger into this. And this is just the normal dependency injection stuff from ASP.NET. So again, we're just injecting this into our constructor. So that should all be the same. We just need to make it work for our service. And it really doesn't like this name. I feel like I'm missing something. Well, that's not the right place to look. If I try to import this, does this help? Doesn't exist. Okay. I feel like I've done something weird. So they are using different things, and I think one of the conflicts here is I am using the tools library, which is just for generating things. There might be more going on here, so I think you would want to use that for not necessarily implementing a service, but I'm getting the impression that that's more useful for like generating this stuff and actually triggering all the tooling. My guess is that the other option here, the ASP.NET implementation, is using this. And really, thinking about this even further, I should have looked a little bit further and looked at this for how to actually create all of this. So we have all of this. There's everything we've already done. But then the next part is actually implementing this and pulling that in. And then for clients, I think you would just use the tools part. So because we're creating a service to actually provide this, we need something that integrates with the rest of ASP.NET, which isn't going to be part of your normal generation of code. You just use something else. So we go here. I think we can just swap out everything here. Let's make this a little bit nicer. There we go. And do I think a store should fix this. So cool. How much did that break and how much did that fix? Already contains a definition. Okay. That part's, I still don't really know what's going on there. But we have all of this. So that should be our implementation for our tooling. So now we implement this, which is basically what we have. Our implementation might be a little bit different here, but for the rest of this, we're doing the same thing. And then I think this is for the client. So this would be connecting and then creating a client for that, and then sending a message and getting that message back. So we can test this afterwards and do something with words with a console app. We should be able to test that way. But do I need? So we have the services is on the server. Perfect. I'm not sure. We also don't need this using statement because we're in a different namespace. example services. Oh, yes, we do. This is the wrong place. I'm sorry, I'm juggling two different repos. So we end up here with this. Why? Did I do something weird? So I removed the swashbuckle version, the package for swashbuckle, which is what is actually generating our swagger bits. So we're going to get rid of that. So all of this part can go away. So now we just have our crate builder. We're adding the controllers, the endpoints, building that, and then adding some redirection and mapping the controllers. I don't even think we need to map the controllers because we're not going to have any. We're replacing controllers with gRPC services. So we shouldn't need those either, I don't think. And I'm pretty sure if we take a look over here, we should see, yeah, those are all gone. So there we go. And it does look like in the example, there is a note here. If you reach out to the top level of your service, it will remind you that you should be doing that over gRPC and to use a gRPC client. That's what this is adding, and then sending you to some docs links. So let's go and add these. We need a service for gRPC, it looks like. And then we need to map those services ourselves. So let's do that. Let's go here and map our service. So app map gRPC service to our my greeter service. And then we can remove our controllers. Again, we're not using controllers, so we don't need that. That can just go away. And then we should be able to jump into this and swap in our gRPC service. So services that add gRPC. And that, again, should replace our controllers. So we'll just swap both of those out, and everything should work. So there we go. Add our services, and now if we build this again, what happens? So this shouldn't, okay, it does work now. Interesting. Why? I'm not entirely sure how that fixed it, but it did. So mapping the services seems to have replaced that. Hello, welcome. We are learning gRPC if you're just joining the stream. So figuring out how to do service-to-service communication using protocol buffers. So this is something I've not learned before. So we're picking it up together. If you have other questions about this, let me know. We can go and find answers together. So there we go. I think we now have a working service. So what's happening here is I'm first off just going to ignore all these warnings, all these errors. I think that's fine. And then in this case, this is the function for what we're actually doing. We have say hello, that's accepting our hello request. And then we also get a server context. So we get a little bit of extra information about what's coming in. And then here we're returning something and saying, say hello with our request in the context. And that's sending back a hello reply. How does this work? So this is just invoking the parent method, which I imagine is like a no-op or something. We probably want to replace this with something else. So how do we do that? I imagine there's other information going on here, because if we go and look at this greeter service, yeah. So the way this works is you just generate a new class. It looks like that's that's the way to do it, is just create a new class, and these are properties. So all of those protocol buffer arguments that you pass in, all the definitions you have for your class, those come across as different named properties that you can then access. And so we just need to construct one of those. So let's jump back to our code and take a look at our hello. So we want to send back a hello reply, say hello with some sort of message. So let's go and do that by creating a new hello reply. And I think we're doing a task dot create. What were they using? Task. Okay, from result. Perfect. Okay. So what this is doing is basically returning an async thing. Because this returns a task, because it's an async function, we need to add a task here. And so that's what's happening here, is just from result with a hello reply. Something like this. What this is doing is just creating a task that is completing successfully with a specific result. So in this case, we're just saying finish this task with this result. There might be other ways to do this that are a little bit cleaner, but this is just how this works. If you're running other async things or invoking other things in some async chain, the task part should already be done for you. So you may not need to wrap it in this from result. This is just useful if we're providing a static result. So there we go. Do all of this. And then our response is a message. So message matches the name here. So we could change this to say greeting. And now I've just broken this. But I should be able to call this greeting and say hello request dot name. We're going to get the name from our request and send back a result with just a basic greeting. And if I build this, it should all work. The downside with this is we can't call this. Again, you will need an RPC or a protobuf support in order to actually interact with this service. Just because we have a few new people, it looks like. We're working on protocol buffers between services. So the idea here is if you're creating a microservice architecture, something where you have lots of services communicating between one another, you can optimize that a little bit by replacing the JSON and the REST requests with something a little bit faster. And that's what protocol buffers and RPCs can do. And so that's what we're working on is figuring out how to send binary data that represents the same thing across our services. So we have a service that does that now. Everything builds, everything works, but we need some way to call it. And if we just try to send a REST request here, it's not supported. We're not going to actually hit anything. So let's go and implement that. We've already done part of it. So let's go and create another one. So .NET new console, and we'll call this our gRPC messenger. Sure. And I don't know the best way to do this. So we're going to just copy from our test. Right, it's copy object something. I don't remember PowerShell. Let's go and figure this out the Explorer way. So if we go into, there we go, gRPC test, find our protocol buffer, and we can actually just copy this entire folder. We're going to bring this over into our service. So we just sent, or we just created, sorry, a messenger. So let's go and add this here. And now we have these protocol buffers there as well. Typically, what I would recommend with this is doing something like a submodule where you have these defined somewhere else, and then you can just import the protocol buffer that way. So they're still in Git and you're not like copying them and they don't get out of sync. By copying them physically, you run into issues where things could get out of sync and you might have messages that don't align as they should, or just changes that happen that you don't catch because you copied the files instead of attaching them to Git. A submodule can help avoid that. So something to consider. But there we go. We have that code. Let's go and open this in our... I spelled this wrong. That's okay. So we have our messenger, and we're going to start sending messages. In order to do this, we need to include two things again. We need the gRPC tools, because that's how we're actually interacting with this. So we're going to go and get that from NuGet, like this. So this is just going to add the ability to compile our protocol buffers again. So if we paste this in, that should now run. And so we now have this, which is what's compiling things. And then we need to actually reference our protocol buffer. So if we do that with another item group, proto something, and we'll figure the rest of this out in just a second, because there's other documentation about how to actually do clients. So let's go and take a look at that. So we just did sort of an overview of creating a service. Now let's actually go and dive into this. So I want to actually create a client. Let's go and take a look at what is needed for that. All of the normal stuff. Where is the configuration? Not in here. Okay. Let's go up a little bit. And I think it might be in this here instead. Nope. All right. We'll figure that out in just a bit. But for now, I'm just going to go and pull in the same reference that we have in our other project. So we jump here. This isn't the right project. I think we can close this now. We've already done that example, so we're good there. Let's go and look at this and grab our protocol buffer and plug that in here. And so this is pointing to the file that defines these services and projects. And this is going to be what's going to actually generate our base. It's going to generate our client that we can use to invoke the service that we want to actually call. So let's build this just to make sure I'm on the right track. And that should go and pull things. I've broken it. So that's not ideal. What have I done? This is the same thing we had previously. Okay, let's go and see what else I could do here, because we've done this. So this is actually pulling everything in. And then here, I don't think I have a namespace defined. So I'm not sure what causes this. But let's try. I don't know. Protobuf, sorry. Let's jump here and look at this. So gRPCs with services. If we look at the overview, I believe we import our file here. And so I'm curious about this. gRPC services can be used to limit C# asset generation. Valid options are both server, client, or none. So because we didn't provide one in our other service, we're generating both the client and the server. And we don't need that. That's not what we need from this file in our server. So here we have gRPC services. Let's create just the client, because this is only going to be sending requests out. It's not going to be receiving them. And then the other one, we can change this to be a server. And so this is now not going to have the gRPC client. It's just going to have the base services. So we can actually generate something to receive these messages. And so just to quickly double check that everything is still good here. Perfect. So our service still works. And I should be able to run this, I think. Haven't tried that yet, so I should probably do that. No. The answer is no. So let's figure this out first. Authorization stuff, we can get rid of that for now. I believe, so gRPC does offer authorization, and I'm making a mess of this scroll bar. There we go. It does have authorization as part of this. We're just not using that version. So I think if I run this now, it should rebuild and everything's good. Perfect. Okay. We can stop that now, and then let's jump back to our client, which is here, and try building again. I think this will still fail. Yeah, so perfect. Why? I don't know. But we are going to figure that out. So calling services, we're looking to configure some things to generate that from proto files. We already have that. Oh, okay. That makes sense. So we don't want that tools library. We want this. Perfect. I should read the documentation. That would be helpful. So if we go here, we can remove this tools bit. We're not using that anymore. Bye. And run this instead. This will get us the client tools. Again, the cool thing with protocol buffers is that it actually gives you a way to generate code for different languages. So if you're using JavaScript or TypeScript or Java or Rust or something else, there's probably going to be something that can generate code for you. So you can create a service and client for your RPCs, whatever they might be. And this gives you a really nice way to like bring your own tools to your service without everything getting really confusing, because then you have to write wrappers every time somebody changes their API. This automates that because everything is automatically generated. So there we go. And I think that should be enough to actually make this work now. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so for the client, we just need the grpc.net client. And then for everything else, we just need the ASP.NET version. And so I think now we can actually send our request. So what I'm going to do is start this with a .NET run. And there we go. So that should get our service up and running here. And then we can actually connect to that. So let's go and configure our client to actually point back to everything that we're trying to do. So in this case, we need to actually generate a client from a channel. So the channel is going to be where you're connecting to. So this would be the address of the server that you're trying to communicate with. And so if we go here, let's just say it's starting client. Then we do this. Our service is not on 501. It is here. And so we can replace this. We will need to import this. There we go. And did we call this a greeter? I don't think we did. We called it something else. I guess we can find out really quickly. Here, greeter. Perfect. And there is no namespace here. Greeter. Okay. I'm not entirely sure. So we should be able to see a client here for our greeter because we're creating something. I'm not sure if my lack of using namespaces is causing issues here. So let's add one, I guess. So if I jump here, I think we had a reference for namespaces. No. All right. Hold on. So tooling support, services, call to gRPC, additional resources. There is documentation. I remember seeing this previously for syntax for how to actually write these messages. This might be it. Not quite, I don't think. Yeah. So anyway, there is syntax for what these messages actually do. This is better. There we go. So there's options that you can provide that will change how these services are generated. One of them is a C# namespace. Keep in mind, this is typically only for that language. So in this case, this sort of impacts C#. If you're doing like packages in Java, it's not going to know what a C# namespace is. So keep that in mind. But let's jump over here and do a Reactor Code Lab. Cool. So this shouldn't change anything. The only difference is that it's going to be compiling in a different place. So .NET Build. And greeter couldn't be found. That's fine because we just moved it. So we have Reactor Code Lab, got greeter client. Not be found. So is this actually working? Yes. So we do have a greeter class. But why don't we have anything that we can use? I'm not sure. So interesting. I don't know the answer to this. So that's interesting. Let's delete it because that'll probably help. And recreate it. So if we rebuild this, that's going to regenerate everything. It shouldn't change anything, but it's just my paranoia. So again, I don't think we actually have anything here. Type or namespace greeter couldn't be found. And I don't think this is what I want either. Like, that's not going to help. Cool. Okay. I don't know where our protobuf is going. So we're going to switch this back to both, or just remove this, I think. Because we definitely were getting generation for our original project. So something has changed. So let's go and build that and see if that's the issue. That should be in the wrong namespace. Interesting. Item group, protobuf. Everything. So the reason I'm checking the OBJ folder is because that's where things are going to show up if they're generated. And this is actually good because it isn't there. So I've screwed something up because we're not generating our file. It isn't happening. So something's wrong. If I jump over here, what have I done differently? Protobuf, item group, include gRPC services. So if we leave this off, it does both. So that should be fine. The only other option is this include, I think. Let me throw this over onto one of my other monitors. Item group, protobuf, include. It all looks the same. I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, no idea. Unless, does order matter? This would be something good to know. Okay, that makes sense. Cool. All right. I'm not entirely sure why this is doing this. We're not getting any generation for our service. So what the next step in this whole thing is basically to have this work, to actually have our code generate, and it was generating and isn't anymore. So I don't know what that means. It might be this grpc.net stuff is not quite doing what I need it to. But my guess is I've screwed something else up. And I'm not entirely sure. Again, we're kind of learning together here, so I don't really know how to fix how to get myself out of holes because I've never done it before. So it's available in this library. Explains how. Generated from that. Okay. Are we just not generating things? Hold on. Maybe I've assumed this does more than I think it does. Are concrete things that are generated from protofiles. And then this is talking about clients, and then making calls and so forth. So why isn't it generating things? How would I figure this out? We don't have that much time to kind of tinker at this, unfortunately. But I definitely will figure this out, and we'll do another video or something on how to do this in a working way. But I think we should be getting something to generate here, and we aren't. I might be missing something because this part works. So the service works. We now have something that we can send gRPCs to. Just something else is not quite lining up. So I'll have to dig into that, I think, because we are unfortunately running out of time. The next thing that I would check, I think, is this. I'm wondering if there's something else generating our stuff that is happening, and I'm ignoring it in my other option. Or if I go into my test project, let's just get rid of this because we don't have it in the other file. An important note here, just talking about this, is the options are optional. So, or like these settings are optional. The important thing is that your messages line up with one another, that the IDs and the size of the message that you're sending, like strings should have the same ID on both sides. You can swap them though. there is some type safety because the code is generated. But if you start sending binary that matches the same signature but has different names or is otherwise something else, there's nothing to like catch that, because that isn't. It's the same thing with JSON. If you send a message that has the same meaning or matches the same syntax but is for a different thing for some reason, it's still going to work, just maybe not how you expect it to. Same thing here. So there's all of that. All of this is as it should be. This isn't going to work. Well, hold on. Now I really confused myself because that shouldn't have happened. That's not a thing. .NET build, perfect. All right, it's still broken, and we aren't getting our code generation. So I'm missing something, and unfortunately, I don't know how to fix it right now. I do run this show every week, so we can come back and look at this a little bit more in depth next week at the same time. So 4 p.m. Pacific time, we can take a look at this. Some other final things. We do have a survey. So if you are watching this, we do have a survey just to see if this is code or this is a show that you want to see more of. If it is, you can fill out the survey and let us know what you think. If you don't want to see more of this, also let us know, because that'll let me know that I should be spending my time doing other things. So either way, it's been great to have you in chat. And thank you all for joining and asking questions and hopefully learning a little bit about gRPC. So thank you so much. And I think that's it for now. So thanks everyone and goodbye.